In this short video, we're going to talk about types of market structures, and in particular, the goal is basically to zoom out and get the big picture of all the stuff we've been talking about when we studied perfect competition in the short run and perfect competition in the long run, types of monopolies and monopolistic competition, and we've talked about P equals MC and MC equals MR and P equal ATC and all of these big mess of equations, and sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming, but it turns out that we really only have four types of market structures, and there's really only two or three, depending on how you count, important equations that you need to know and need to memorize. So the way I like to think about market structures is we can summarize them using like a 2x2 box. So we'll draw a nice box here and then divide it along two dimensions. The first dimension is whether we're talking about firms in the long run or short run. So we can have short run for the first row, and then we can have long run for the second row. In the long run, the thing that characterizes the long run, that makes it the long run, is that firms will enter or exit as needed in order for profits to go to zero. And our zero profit condition was P equal ATC. Instead of writing pi equals 0, we typically write P equal ATC for reasons that I honestly don't understand. In the short run, we don't have any special equation because we could have positive profit, and that will tend to draw firms to enter in the long run, but it's perfectly fine in the short run. We could have zero profit in the short run by divine coincidence, and we could even have negative profit in the short run, where firms want to exit, but they can't in the short run, so that's just not an option. The other dimension that we can compare firms along is whether they are price takers or price makers. And basically, price maker is just code word for this is some type of monopoly, and price taker is code for our purposes, this is some kind of perfect competition. So our price taker equation was P equal MR, and there's a special video on marginal revenue for price takers that if you don't understand why this equation applies to price takers, either take it on faith from me, it's P equal MR, or watch that video again and try to understand the logic. I think the logic's not too complicated, but it's a little subtle, so you'll probably want to review that video. For price makers, similarly, we have a video that discusses them and their marginal revenue, and the conclusion we made was that price will be above marginal revenue. So this gives us our four types of firms. We can have short-run price takers, where they maximize profit, so MC equals MR, and they're price takers, so P equals MR, and those are our two equations that characterize this whole market. There's other equations that will be true. For instance, since P equals MR and MR equals MC, we know P will equal MC. But given these two, it's pretty easy to derive that as a consequence. It's not something you need to memorize. And there's nothing we can conclude about the ATC for this top left box, because we really have no idea if firms are making profits or losing money or zero profit or whatnot. And if we wanted to give a name to this situation, it would be perfect competition in the short run. So I'll just write that as PCSR. So our top left box is PCSR. You can probably guess then that if the top left is PCSR, when we shift to the bottom left, we're shifting from short run to long run, so this will be perfect competition in the long run. Here we'll also have MC equal MR, because firms maximize profit. We'll also have P equal MR, because we're in the left column for price takers. But since we're in the bottom row, we'll also have zero profit, so we'll have P equal ATC. And now, using these three equations, the only three that you need to memorize for perfect competition in the long run, you can derive all the other implications. For instance, in perfect competition in the long run, we'll have P equal MC, because P equal MR and MC equal MR, but P equals ATC, so you'll have, in addition to P equal MR equal MC, you'll have P equal ATC equal MR equal MC equal P, blah, blah, blah. So when you combine all of this, you can see that, as a rule, MC will equal ATC, and we called that minimum efficient scale, which I like to just shorten as efficient scale. So we've shown here below that anytime you're in perfect competition in the long run, you have to be operating at efficient scale, not because that's something that's worth memorizing, but because if you know these three equations that apply, because you're in the bottom left part of the box where those three equations basically by definition, we said, let's put these three equations together and see what happens. We derived that it's efficient scale. So we know that that conclusion goes up here. Not as something to memorize, but as something that we just kind of derived. So those are two types of market structures we studied. The other two we studied are monopoly/monopolistic competition in the short run. We studied these as two separate market structures, but they're actually the same. There's no way to distinguish them. Anytime you have a price maker, so you have P greater than MR, and you have profit maximizing MC equals MR, that characterizes both monopoly and monopolistic competition in the short run. So you'll have some consequences you can derive. For instance, since P is greater than MR and MR is equal to MC, you can see that P will be greater than MR. Monopolies charge a markup. They don't want to sell at their marginal cost because then you're not making much money from that marginal sale. In fact, you're not making any money. Instead, you want to charge a markup above and beyond your marginal cost so that you can make some marginal profit. So markups will apply here. But that's not something you memorize. You just memorize the two equations in the box and then derive markups. Our final bottom right box is basically where we take the monopoly, the top right, and push it into the long run. We add in this zero profit condition that we've been talking about. And when you do that, you get monopolistic competition in the long run, which I like to call MC long run. So then you'll have MC equal MR because you maximize profit. You'll have P greater than MR because you're a price maker. And now by assumption, since we're in the long run, we have P equal ATC. And you can go ahead and you can take these three equations, and as an exercise, go ahead and show that given those three equations, you have to have MC less than ATC. And we called that excess capacity, because you're below efficient scale. So you have like capacity to increase production and move towards efficiency. So that's pretty much a summary, like the big picture view of our types of market structures. We studied price takers and price makers. So you can divide along an axis of taker versus maker. And then we also studied firms in the short run where we have no idea what the profits are, and the long run where we know profit is zero. And if you divide 4 cells into these 4 possible types, we get perfect competition in the short run, perfect competition in the long run, monopolistic competition in the long run, monopoly/monopolistic competition in the short run. And we don't have to memorize these sets of equations together. You just kind of get them by saying, okay, well, if we're in the long run and we're a price maker, then we're in the bottom right. So we have, by definition, P equal ATC, P greater than MR, and every box has MC equals MR. And then knowing we have these three, we can show things like MC is less than ATC, that we have excess capacity. So there's not a lot you need to memorize. You just need to memorize the two axes, price taker versus maker, and short run versus long run, then draw the box and set up your 4 types, and then given your assumptions for the 4 types, for each of the 4 types, you can derive each of their special implications.